population of Atlanta, a lot of times people say, how black is Atlanta? Right now it's 52% black, 36% white, and about 5% Hispanic, but a lot of people are moving here, so that number is changing daily. Home ownership rate, we may talk about some of this tonight, 43%. And most people commute in Atlanta by car, and I swear it takes 30 minutes to get anywhere, even if you're just going across the street. We're known as having the busiest airport in the world, where over 100 million passengers come through it. You already know Atlanta by its music, but now we're a big thing in the film industry. Last year, we did over 455 movies and television projects with an impact of $9.5 billion. And it's growing. We're like #1 in the movie and TV industry right now. Now, this is a fact I didn't know about Atlanta before I started doing this research. Atlanta was burned to the ground in 1864. And it rebuilt itself from the ashes, which is why when you look all over Atlanta, you see the phoenix. You know, I didn't know that. I see the phoenix all over the place, and now I know why. So I think that these are some of the basic things about Atlanta. But as any city is growing, it has growing pains, okay? So some of the things that Atlanta's facing right now, one of the things is transit. We're growing. We have 13 county regions, and we're working on getting transportation to connect to all these counties. Because Atlanta has a very large airport, we're in the center kind of the southeast region, it's become a transit place for highway, rail, and air, ocean-going goods. So Atlanta's become a very important freight hub. Also right now happening in Atlanta, we're having issues sometimes matching jobs to qualified workers. We have a lot of jobs here, but a lot of our training, and we have to beef up what we have to do to get people jobs here. We're also working on affordable housing. You know, when we talk about affordable housing, a lot of times we consider housing need to be about 30% of our income. So if someone's only making $50,000 to $60,000 a year, it's very tough to find affordable housing here. We actually by 2030, 1 out of every 5 residents is going to be over the age of 60. I'll be in that category. So we want to keep you moving there. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is improving the readiness for education. Education is a very big issue, especially starting with 3rd grade reading skills, and we're working on improving that as well, and I'm sure we're going to have some discussion on that this evening. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guest for the evening. You know, a very special guest, Councilmember Archambault, who's currently serving her 5th term as a member of the Atlanta City Council of District 5. You know, one of the reasons I'm excited to have her with us this evening is because she's not only working to make Atlanta a better place, she's a product of Atlanta. Okay, so she's been here, she's seen it, so we're going to talk about where Atlanta was, where Atlanta is today, and where Atlanta is poised to be in the future. And I don't think there's anyone better to discuss it with than someone that's not only seen it happen, she's been diligently working to make it happen. Through her, we came up with how many years of the?
18.
18 years. All right. So I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parham.
Thanks for coming out for our first inaugural test of time. So let's talk about your experience being a council member. You know, what has that been? 18 years. I mean, is that? Tell me this: has it gone as quickly, or has it been a long journey for you?
It's gone at a pretty fast clip. I can't believe that it's been that long, but it's been a very interesting journey, and I have enjoyed the time that I spent in being a part of decisions that are changing Atlanta and making it better.
But you started out long before being a council member really affecting change in Atlanta. You know, I read your bio, you know, went like this. You know? So some of the questions I want to talk about, you know, you were very big with education, you know, and but coming with reading your bio, I found out you didn't fall far from the tree. So let's talk about your influence that your parents had on you in education and like civic involvement.
Certainly. I am a proud graduate of Atlanta Public Schools. My mom taught at Atlanta Public Schools all of her professional career, and my dad was an elected official in DeKalb County. He was the DeKalb County Commissioner. But before that, my dad was the PTA president at every school we attended. We could not get away from that guy, and didn't want to, frankly.
Okay.
So from the vantage point of having an educator in the home and having the other parent being as invested in our educational outcome really informed how I felt about being supportive of our public education system.
So by him being a PTA, I mean, he was very community involved. Your family was very community involved.
Yes, he was. He was at a lot of community meetings. He was very concerned about some changes that were happening. We lived in East Atlanta, and that was a stone's throw from what used to be known as Little Vietnam, which was a housing project. There were some great families in there. We went to school together with those families, but when the decision was being made around whether or not to put a school in that community, my dad was really involved, along with John Evans, a name that we all know, around what would be the best for that community. And so I just remember from a very early age when there were critical decisions being made involving the community, my dad was at the table.
And that meant you were probably in the room too watching all this happen.
No, I didn't see Hamilton then, where, you have to be in the room where it happened.
Okay.
I was home to hear about it afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
How about that?
Okay. That's the same, because he came back and they did a debriefing.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So you've watched Atlanta grow. So why is it so hot right now? Why is, everybody, all my friends, everybody they call wants to move to Atlanta. What's the attraction?
Well, we've got a lot of assets here that I think we can claim that no other community in this country can claim. We're the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King, right? You can't take that from us, and it has shaped who we are. We also have historical black colleges here. We have I'm a Morehouse, I call myself a Spell House baby. My parents met at, my dad at Morehouse, my mom at Spelman, and when they graduated, they got married, and here we go. And so we have Clark, and we just have a number of institutions that are important to this nation that give Atlanta presence. And then we're known as a mecca for people of color, particularly black people. And so that moniker is one that we wear proudly, and people do look to us nationally when there are issues that are at the forefront of our nation, when there are concerns around human rights. We are that go-to place, and I'm very happy about that. And we can't forget having the busiest airport in the world.
It's very busy. So with everything that's happening in Atlanta right now, we've had the Super Bowl, we've had different events here. Atlanta, when I first got here, I moved here in '88, and Atlanta was a southern city. Do you think it's losing its southern appeal, or are we still capturing the southern appeal of the South in Atlanta? But everybody's moving here from New York and L.A.?
One of the things I've heard about New York is you can always tell a New Yorker, right? But Atlanta was sort of a melting pot and a hodgepodge. But no, I think we do have some distinctively Southern attributes. We do like to know our neighbors, and we do, we play that do you know this person game. Like I might meet a new person, I'll say, well, okay, did you know Fred? He lived around the corner.
Right.
And so we do have that sense of trying to build connections as we build community. Food is real a big part of what we are known for here, and I don't think we've lost that. And I've visited other cities. My daughters lived up in the north, and I do know that there's more sense of community. We're not strangers just passing by, the hustle and bustle. We're not quite there yet. We still are small enough, intimate enough, that we feel a connection to each other that's real. And so I don't think we've lost it. I do think we need to be aware and be protective of those distinctive traits that make us special. I appreciate that question.
And I agree with that, because I think too that holding on to our communities, I work a lot in the community, and I see people in the community being very concerned about losing their place. So what are your thoughts? They have all the gentrification, all these things going on right now. Are we holding on? Are the people that are born and raised here, that are part of the community, Do they have something to be concerned about, or do you think that we're going to work it out?
I think that we're at, again, a crossroads. I do think that a lot of the families that I remember being in, say, the neighborhood that I grew up in, a lot of them, when they grew up, they moved to other places. They moved to the suburbs because that was sexy and trendy at that point. And so they left their parents here. And so it is their parents that I am interfacing with at this point. And so I do think that there is a concern around the legacy families being able to keep up with the taxes and being able to feel that they're still a part of a community that they recognize.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of community, we just got a question about, I said District 5, but what is your area? District 2?
So District 5 is comprised of, the majority of it is in DeKalb County. So
Okay.
the communities in DeKalb County, Eastlake, Kirkwood, Lake Claire, East Atlanta, Edgewood. And then I pick up Reynoldstown, Cabbagetown, and a part of Old Fourth Ward, the Auburn Avenue, Edgewood area.
You know, since we're talking about your area, you know, when I looked at your bio, you seem like you're also an economic development person as well, okay? Because you've done some amazing things. So if you could, you know, do you want me to talk about some of them, or like some of the things that you were doing, like in the Edgewood retail district? Let's talk about some of the things that you've done while you've had the opportunity to serve Atlanta that I feel have changed the face of certain areas and made people feel embraced.
Well, before I became an elected official, I was the founding member of the East Atlanta Business Association, and I served as the president of that organization for 3 years. It's an area that we now know as the East Atlanta Village.
A bumping area too.
Yes, it's very, very trendy. It's very diverse. I'm really, really proud of the entrepreneurs that are situated in East Atlanta. It reflects, I think, a lot of the diversity within our city. We've got retail, we've got services, you know, we've got restaurants. It's just a great destination. I'm really proud of the energy and the experience that I had in dealing with small business owners because they are the backbone of our economy. And so that was a great springboard. And then when I was elected, one of the first big zoning cases that I had involved the proposed development of the Edgewood Retail District. That turned out to be, after many, many months of negotiation, to be an employment center for our area, over 1,600 jobs. It was the first time that we had on the southeast side of town retailers such as Target and Lowe's and Barnes and Noble and Office Depot and on and on and on. And it generated millions of dollars in sales tax. And so we were able to demonstrate not only that we had the sophistication to navigate through the zoning and land use changes necessary to bring that to fruition in a way that was respectful and sensitive to community, but we also brought jobs and showed that the southeast side of Atlanta is indeed relevant.
You know, so was the resistance just resisting the change? People are just afraid for the area to change?
There was some fear along those lines. There was a lot of fear around traffic and congestion and feeling that this would be a precursor to displacement.
Gotcha. That's a very big word there.
Displacement.
Yeah.
Or precursor, which one?
And that's when we get back to how is this growth affecting community. Do you feel that as we're growing, we're also being conscious of these issues about the feeling of displacement, you know, without getting into the weeds? I know we can't get into the weeds on this, but do you feel our leadership is feeling, helping people understand?
Well, I know that I do, and I want to give a shout out to the constituents that I represent. We have an organization that started in East Lake called Neighbor in Need. It was started by a guy who moved into East Lake with his family. He was very comfortable with the price point, the taxes and all of that, but he saw his nearby neighbors suffering with dilapidated roofs or having struggles with being able to maintain their homes. And so he started an entity called Neighbor in Need. And that model of helping a neighbor who has a need has now been replicated to 5 other neighborhoods in District 5. And so it's a way for those who may be quote-unquote gentrifiers being able to give back and to help their neighbors feel that they are still, important.
So
and part
that
of the
means we're
community.
still a part of the community.
That's the most important part.
I have another question here. They just call and pop them in.
All right. Those are friends of mine. Thank you.
Those are friends. All right. Good deal. The city recently closed the city jail downtown. What are your plans for the repurposing of the facilities?
Well, that's not quite accurate. The legislation that was signed by the mayor a few days ago is to talk about closing that jail.
Okay.
And there's this task force that's being formed, and I would recommend that any viewer who is interested in being part of that conversation around what would be the repurposing of that facility, that you should contact your council representative and let them know of your interest. The task force will be studying it, looking at best practices. I know they took a trip, I think it was to New York, a few people did, to look at what happened with what was formerly a jail, and now it's a community center of some sort.
Really?
So it's a work in progress.
Okay. I mentioned earlier this whole movie industry, thing. From your viewpoint as being a city official, how has it affected the city?
Well, at the granular level, I get a few complaints about street closures
always.
and the like, but it's another one of those things that draws people to Atlanta.
Right.
We're the Hollywood of the South, and so it has been exciting to have that industry come to this side of the hemisphere. And it's also been an opportunity for entrepreneurs.
Right.
There's been a lot of skill building.
Right.
There's a program set up to learn how to do basic component parts of the industry. So it's been an economic, it's revitalized a lot of economic spaces in the city.
And I work in the, business climate, small business. Yes, we were talking earlier about how has the growth of Atlanta affected small business. What are your thoughts on that?
How has the growth of Atlanta helped small businesses?
Right.
Well, whenever there's growth, there's room for others to go along
Right.
with it. Remember, just as an example, when the Kia plant was being debated where it would locate, it was interesting to see how folks who were in the battery industry or
Right.
the restaurant industry
Right.
were going to follow wherever it was. And so I know that for example, the movie industry, there's a makeup boom with artistry in that
Right.
area.
That's correct.
Film editing,
Right.
some of the, just the component parts of all that. I'm not an expert in all that, but I do know as the big stuff goes, so do the
So, yeah,
smaller
that is correct.
supporting businesses.
So it's, Atlanta's become this, like with our show that we're doing here, our goal is to really show Atlanta, another side of Atlanta. That's why I'm so thankful that you came on as our guest tonight, because you're a native, you know what's really going on.
Don't blame me.
Don't. But the thing is that the growth, the movie industry, I read something saying that we actually are the third with large corporations here now.
Fortune?
Yeah, Fortune 500 companies, so everything is really changing. So we have some more time here, so let's talk about some of the things that you see out in the future for yourself, without giving away too many of your secrets, that you'd like to see happen, for Atlanta to progress to the city you'd like to see it become.
Well, one of the things that keeps me up at night is affordability.
Okay.
Making sure that the city that I love and grew up in is one where the next generation, and even those who are beyond the next generation, are able to come in and be able to find housing that is within their price point.
Right.
And that is safe. And so that is something that we have to be very intentional about. And we are looking at ways to, we've got inclusionary zoning in some parts of the city. If you're getting money from Invest Atlanta or the Beltline, or if you build in a particular area, then there's an affordability component. But we've got to do more. It's got to be a priority to make sure that citizens have a place to live that they can afford.
And I think you're right too. Afford in areas too where their children can get a good education as well. I know one of your pillars that you stand on is education, and hopefully we're working towards, improving. We've had some issues over the last few years with education, but do you feel that we're working stronger to building a better educational environment for our children?
Well, APS, Atlanta Public Schools, just passed an equity sort of platform for the school system. It was the first time they've done one. I do think that we need to make sure that every child learns, and we need to make sure that every neighborhood has a strong neighborhood school. And so that is something that is very important for any successful city. And I can tell you that in the district that I represent, the parents have been at the epicenter of that.
Right.
When the parents invest in the school and decide that they're going to make sure that their children receive the best education possible, it's going to happen. And so we've got a template for parental engagement and holding educators accountable that's resulted in measurable success.
Measurable. And that's what we need, because we have all these colleges and universities here that these kids can go to with the scholarships and things like that, but we got to get them out of elementary school first,
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we also need to think about careers, right?
Careers.
So you get an education for the purpose of being able to be self-sufficient and to be employable or to create a job. And so skill building and making sure that not everybody's going to college, and so making sure that we have a track for everybody so that they can be successful as adults.
Yeah,
It's really important.
And I think that's important, man. I think a lot of opportunities are here. One thing I do want to ask about, we have all these pockets of Atlanta of different cultures now. So what is your view from the city standpoint of Atlanta becoming more of a multicultural environment? I see people over here on Buford Highway, everybody in their own little place. You think we're all working together to make Atlanta a better place?
I do, and I think when the mayor said that we would be a welcoming city, that we would not allow ICE to have detainees here, and to make sure that the population and those who are coming to Atlanta feel welcome and valued. I do think that is a hallmark of Atlanta. Right. And so it's that melting pot that we all learned about in school is in actuality happening here in Atlanta. So I think we're doing a really good job, because we do celebrate diversity and welcome it.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I just want to thank you for taking the time this evening to come out, especially on the first show, and give us your input. Love to have you come back so we can talk some more about other things that, I have a list of questions here, but I value your input.
Well, I want to thank you.
And I value your 18 years of hanging in there, and it couldn't have been easy. So I just want to thank you for coming out, and I look forward to having you come back. This is Atlanta Connections. My name is Marc Parham, host of the show this evening. Thank you for callers for calling in and asking questions. We're going to be doing this every Wednesday at 8 p.m. So I want you to join us. Like I said, send us show ideas. But I want to thank you guys for listening today, and I hope to see you again in the future. And as I like to say, I look forward to our next encounter. And, one of the things I do want to say is that you're going to see the credits at the end of this. I want to thank People TV also for allowing us the opportunity to come out, start showing a different side of Atlanta. And remember now, go to peopletv.org to find out about doing your own show, learning how to do television production. And just once again, thanks for coming out, and I look forward to you coming back next week. All right.
Good show.
Into the glass and prayed it would help me.